When all hope was gone, humanity's Doomworlders appeared. The skies above Earth had darkened long ago, and the cities that once buzzed with life had fallen silent. Once thriving metropolises were now nothing more than hollow shells, their towering buildings abandoned and covered in grime. Nature had begun to reclaim the planet, but it wasn't a peaceful reclamation. The climate had spiraled into chaos, floods, droughts, violent storms. Entire nations were on the brink of collapse, and the human race, scattered and desperate, was fighting a losing battle. In the underground bunkers where the last governments had gathered, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Leaders sat at long tables, their faces grim, their eyes tired from years of constant struggle. They had tried everything to save humanity. They had sent out messages into space, hoping to find help, but nothing had come back. They had attempted to reverse the damage done to the planet, but their efforts were futile. The ice caps continued to melt, the air grew thinner, and food supplies were running low. It was in this moment of despair that the Doomworlder program had been conceived. Dr. Clara Morrison, a lead scientist in one of the last remaining human research facilities, stared out the thick glass window of the bunker. The world she knew had already fallen apart. Her city, her home, was barely recognizable anymore, swallowed by the chaos. Yet there was still hope, a fragile hope. The Doomworlder program was a secret project, one that few knew about, even fewer understood. It was humanity's final gamble. The plan was simple yet dangerous. Create a new breed of humans, genetically modified to survive the hostile environment of Earth. They would be stronger, faster, smarter, able to endure the extreme conditions that had driven the rest of humanity to near extinction. The project had started years ago, but it had always been shrouded in secrecy. Only a small group of scientists, military leaders, and world leaders knew of its existence. The idea was that the Doomworlders would be humanity's last hope, the ones who could fight back against the growing alien threat. The aliens had arrived quietly at first. No one had seen it coming. Mysterious ships appeared in the sky, their technology far more advanced than anything humanity had ever seen. They struck without warning, wiping out entire cities in a matter of hours. Some called them invaders, others called them the harbingers of the end. No one really knew why they were here, only that they had come with a singular purpose: to destroy. Now Earth was a battleground. The alien invaders had taken over large portions of the world's population, using their advanced weapons to tear through human defenses. The last pockets of resistance were scattered across the globe, hiding in remote areas or beneath the surface. But even their numbers were dwindling. Humanity's strength had been shattered. Most cities had fallen. The time for conventional warfare was over. The only chance of survival lay in the Doomworlder program. Dr. Morrison's mind raced as she thought about the consequences of the program. There was no going back. Once the Doomworlders were unleashed, there was no telling how they would adapt to their new, enhanced abilities. Would they still be human, or would they become something else entirely? The question haunted her as much as the world's fate. In the underground facility, the team was ready. The first Doomworlders were housed in special chambers, kept in cryogenic stasis until the time was right. The chamber doors were heavy metal, designed to withstand anything. Inside, the first of the Doomworlders lay in deep sleep, their bodies altered by years of genetic modification. They were designed to survive, to fight, and perhaps, just perhaps, save humanity from the brink of extinction. Zara was the first Doomworlder to be awakened. She had been in stasis for almost 5 years, and though the others had been prepared to activate in sequence, Zara was the first to be chosen. Her body was stronger than any human, her mind sharper, and her endurance unparalleled. She had been created for one reason: to fight. When Zara's eyes opened, the world she had known was gone. The sterile, cold white walls of the chamber were the only thing she could see. She blinked, adjusting to the light, feeling disoriented. Her body, stronger than she had ever felt, seemed both foreign and familiar. It was as if she had been reborn, but the reality outside the chamber was much darker than she could have imagined. She stepped out of the cryo chamber slowly, her movements deliberate. She had been trained for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for what lay beyond the doors. The world outside was not the one she had been told about. It was an empty wasteland. She looked out of the bunker's window at the land beyond. Ruined cities, smoke rising from the wreckage of what once had been thriving communities. The air felt thick, heavy with dust and pollution. The temperature was cold and the sky above was choked with clouds. The ozone layer had eroded, leaving the Earth's surface exposed to harsh solar radiation. Every step Zara took felt like a step into a new, terrifying world. She had been created for this very moment. Her enhanced senses kicked in immediately. She could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning, the distant rumble of thunder from a storm far off, and the crackling of fire somewhere in the distance. Her vision sharpened, and she could see details others would have missed. The cracked ground beneath her feet, the rusted machinery scattered around the abandoned compound, and the remnants of human life. The reality of the situation was clear now. The Doomworlders had been designed not only to fight against the aliens, but to endure and survive on a planet that had become hostile to human life. As Zara made her way through the bunker, she met the rest of her team, Doomworlders who had been activated alongside her. They were all different, their enhanced traits each unique, but they shared the same purpose: to fight, to survive, and to reclaim the Earth. The mission was simple: find the alien invaders, engage them in battle, and force them to leave. But the task was far more complicated than it seemed. The aliens were not just another enemy. They were a force of nature, one that had been slowly draining the planet's resources for decades. Their technology was far beyond anything humanity had developed, and their knowledge of the Earth's environment was terrifyingly advanced. Zara's team, despite their enhanced abilities, was outmatched, but they had no choice. They had been created to be humanity's last hope, and they would give everything to ensure that humanity had a future. As the Doomworlders prepared to leave the bunker and venture out into the wasteland, they knew one thing for sure: the road ahead would be filled with danger. But they also knew that they were humanity's final hope. They had been created for this purpose, and they would fight until the very end. But Zara couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the back of her mind. Were they really the last hope for humanity? Or were they just the final step in the inevitable downfall of mankind? Only time would tell. Zara stood at the edge of the ruined city, staring at the wasteland before her. The air was thick with dust and smoke, the once vibrant world now a memory. Tall, crumbling buildings lined the streets, some collapsed, others leaning precariously. The earth itself seemed to tremble beneath her feet, a constant reminder of the world's decay. The rest of the Doomworlders were with her, their faces set with grim determination. They had been activated only hours ago, and already they faced a world they had never known. The Doomworlder program had promised them the strength to fight, but nothing could have prepared them for the scale of what had happened. Zara had been born for this moment, enhanced beyond human limitations, trained to endure the worst that the Earth could throw at them. But she had never imagined just how broken the world had become. The destruction was so vast, so complete. It was as though the Earth itself had given up. "We need to move," one of her fellow Doomworlders, Mark, said. His voice was calm but tinged with an edge of urgency. He was a giant of a man, his broad shoulders and massive frame a testament to the genetic modifications that made him stronger than any human. But his eyes, though focused, betrayed the uncertainty he felt. Zara nodded and stepped forward. She was different, too. Taller than average, her hair was a deep, dark brown, now matted with dust. Her skin was tough, almost like armor, but she could still feel the weight of the atmosphere pressing down on her, reminding her of how fragile humanity had become. They made their way through the broken streets, moving cautiously. There were no sounds of life, no children playing, no vendors shouting in the markets. It was as though the world had been abandoned. Only the occasional wind carried the whispers of something unseen, something that still roamed the ruins. Zara scanned the horizon, her enhanced vision picking up every detail in the distance. She could see the signs of life: small groups of people hiding in the shadows, scavenging for food, avoiding the constant threat of the alien invaders. Humanity was still here, but barely, and Zara knew it wouldn't be long before they were completely wiped out. As they walked, Zara's mind raced. The Doomworlders had been created to fight the aliens, to reclaim the Earth, but who were they fighting for? The world they were supposed to save had already been destroyed. There were no cities left, no governments to protect. What remained of humanity had scattered into isolated pockets, struggling to survive. And the aliens, the Orcsians, were everywhere. The Orcsians had arrived without warning, their ships appearing in the sky like dark shadows, bringing destruction with them. Their weapons had torn through the Earth's defenses, killing thousands in a matter of hours. And now, they controlled most of the planet, leaving only small, scattered groups of humans to hide in the shadows. Zara couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The aliens weren't just invaders. They weren't here for power or resources, at least not in the way humans would think. They were something else entirely. But what? What was their true purpose? "We should rest," another Doomworlder, Sarah, spoke up. She was the smallest of the group, but her intellect was unmatched. She had been designed for strategy and problem-solving, her mind sharp and analytical. "We need to conserve energy. This is going to take time," Zara agreed. Though their bodies were enhanced to survive the harshest conditions, they still needed rest. Their task ahead was daunting. They needed to locate the Orexians, understand their plans, and find a way to stop them. But Zara had no idea where to begin. As night fell, the group found a shelter in the remains of a once bustling neighborhood. The buildings around them were dark, their windows shattered, the streets littered with debris. Zara sat against a crumbling wall, closing her eyes for a moment, trying to clear her mind. But the images of what had happened, the destruction, the helplessness of humanity, it all came rushing back. "What now?" she asked, looking up at the others. They were all looking to her, waiting for her to lead, but Zara didn't have the answers. She wasn't just a soldier, she was human too, and the weight of the world's fall was heavy on her shoulders. "We find them," Mark said simply. "We fight." Zara nodded, though she wasn't sure if they were ready. The Orexians had superior technology, and they had already taken control of the Earth's resources. How could a handful of genetically enhanced humans stand a chance against that? "Tomorrow, we move north," Zara said, her voice steady, though uncertainty lingered in her mind. "We need to get to the old military base. It's the last known location of any kind of human resistance." As the group settled in for the night, Zara couldn't help but wonder if it was even worth it. The resistance had already been crushed. What could they possibly do? But she didn't voice her doubts. They needed hope, even if it was a fragile hope. The next morning, they began their journey toward the northern military base, traveling through more ruins. The streets were eerily silent, the occasional sound of a distant explosion or the screech of alien machinery breaking the stillness. Every now and then, Zara would catch sight of a few humans, hiding in alleys or behind abandoned cars, but they never approached. Fear was all that remained in the hearts of the survivors. As they neared the military base, the signs of alien occupation became more apparent. The roads had been cleared, but the landscape was bleak. Zara could feel the tension growing within her team. This was their first major mission, and no one knew what awaited them. "We need to stay sharp," Zara warned as they entered a narrow alley. Her senses were on high alert. The air felt different here, charged like something was about to happen. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed through the street. Zara tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at her side. The sound was coming from a nearby building. She motioned for the group to stop. "They're close," Sarah whispered. Zara nodded. They had made it this far, and they couldn't turn back now. Whatever happened, they had to press forward. The group carefully moved toward the source of the noise, keeping to the shadows. Zara's enhanced vision allowed her to see clearly in the dim light, and she spotted a group of Orexians moving through the building. They were tall, their bodies encased in sleek armor, and their faces hidden behind helmets. The Orexians' weapons were unlike anything humans had ever seen, energy-based, silent, and deadly. "We can't engage them yet," Mark said, his voice low. "We're outnumbered." Zara hesitated. They had come this far, but they needed more information. They needed to understand the Orexians' plans before they could strike. If they attacked now, it could be a disaster. "We wait," Zara decided. "We watch and learn." The group took cover in the nearby ruins, their eyes fixed on the Orexians. The alien forces moved with precision, their steps calculated, as if they knew exactly what they were doing. It was a terrifying sight. Hours passed, and Zara's patience was tested. She knew time was running out for humanity. The longer they waited, the less chance they had to strike. But she also knew that rushing in blindly would only get them killed. As dusk fell, the Orexians began to retreat into the shadows, disappearing into the night. Zara motioned for the group to move. They had learned what they needed. "Tonight, we make our move," Zara said quietly, her voice firm. But in her heart, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The Orexians had been watching them, studying them, and it was only a matter of time before they struck back. The real fight had just begun, and Zara knew that the fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. But the question remained, would the Doomworlders be enough to save them? Or would they, too, become another casualty of Earth's inevitable end? The night was thick with silence as Zara and her team approached the old military base. The ground beneath them was cracked and uneven, the remnants of what had once been a secure outpost now just a shadow of its former self. The base, located on the outskirts of what used to be a thriving city, had been abandoned long before the alien invasion began. But now it was the last known place where human resistance had gathered. Zara could feel the weight of her mission pressing down on her shoulders. The Doomworlders had been created to fight the Orcsians, but they hadn't expected this level of devastation. The world they had been born into was not the one they had imagined. The Earth was no longer a place of hope, it was a battleground. Humanity was scattered, broken, and fading, and with each passing hour Zara could feel her hope slipping away. Her team moved with purpose, but every step felt like a step into the unknown. The military base loomed ahead, dark and silent, as if it had long ago given up on being a symbol of strength. Zara's enhanced vision scanned the area looking for any sign of life, any trace of the resistance that had once called this place home. But there was nothing, only the echoes of what had been. "We're close," Mark said in a low voice, his eyes scanning the base's perimeter. "Stay alert," Zara nodded, her mind focused on the task at hand. They needed to find out if the resistance was still active, and if so, what information they had on the Orcsians. The Doomworlders were humanity's last hope, but they couldn't fight a war without knowing their enemy. As they neared the entrance, Zara held up her hand to signal the team to stop. There was movement ahead. Two figures emerged from the shadows, moving cautiously toward them. Zara instinctively reached for her weapon, but as the figures came into view, she recognized them as humans, survivors like those they had seen on their journey. "Who's there?" Zara called out, her voice steady but cautious. One of the figures stepped forward, his face weathered and tired, his clothes torn and stained. "We're not looking for trouble," he said, his voice raspy. "We thought you were them." "The Orcsians?" Zara asked, her tone hardening. She knew the answer, but she needed to hear it from them. The Orcsians were always lurking, always watching, and the survivors had learned to be cautious. The man nodded. "They've been here. They left a few days ago, but we've seen them, tracking us, hunting us." Zara's heart sank. The Orcsians were everywhere. They were not just invaders, they were predators, and now they were hunting the last remnants of humanity. "We need to get inside," Zara said, motioning for her team to move forward. "You've seen them." "What can you tell us about the Orcsians? Where are they now?" The man hesitated, glancing over his shoulder as if expecting an attack. "They've been taking people alive. Some are transformed. We don't know how or why, but we've seen them with our own eyes. They're not just soldiers, they're something else." Zara's mind raced. "Transformed?" The survivor nodded. "They're using some kind of technology, implanting it into people. It changes them, makes them stronger, faster, more like them. We've lost people to it, people we knew. They're no longer human, they've become soldiers for the Orcsians." Zara's blood ran cold. The Orcsians weren't just fighting humans. They were rewriting humanity itself, turning people into weapons, stripping away their humanity in the process. This was more than an invasion. It was a destruction of what it meant to be human. "We need to find the resistance," Zara said, her voice sharper now. "If they're still here, we need their help. We can't fight the Orcsians alone." The survivor led them into the base, through a narrow entrance that was barely wide enough for the team to pass through. The interior was dark, lit only by flickering emergency lights. The walls were covered in dust and grime, and the air smelled stale and heavy. The base had once been a fortress, a place of strength and security. Now it felt more like a tomb. As they moved deeper into the base, Zara's mind raced with the implications of what they had learned. The Orcsians weren't just invading Earth. They were transforming it, turning humanity into something unrecognizable. And the resistance, the last line of defense, had already been broken. The survivors they had met were the remnants of a shattered force, living in constant fear of the Orcsians' next move. But there was still hope, fragile as it was. The Doomworlders had been created to fight, and they had the strength to carry the fight forward. Zara couldn't let this be the end. They had to stop the Orcsians, whatever the cost. They arrived at a small room deep inside the base, where a group of survivors had taken refuge. There were only a few of them, mostly older men and women, some with children, others with hollow eyes that spoke of too many years spent hiding. It was clear that the resistance had once been a larger force, but now it was little more than a handful of desperate souls. Zara stepped forward, her voice firm. "We're here to help. Tell us everything you know about the Orexians. We need to know where they are, what they're planning. We can't stop them alone." One of the survivors, an older man with graying hair and a scar across his face, stepped forward. His eyes were wary, but there was a flicker of hope in them. "You've come at the right time. We've been watching them. We know where their base is, but it's not just about stopping them. We've learned something that you need to hear." Zara listened intently as the man spoke. He told her of the Orexians' plans to harvest Earth's resources, to strip the planet of everything it had left. They weren't just interested in the people, they were after the planet itself. The Orexians had a way of harnessing Earth's energy, using it to fuel their own war machine. "They've been here before," the man continued, "long ago, but they left. Now they've come back, stronger than ever, and they're not just taking resources, they're taking our people. We've seen them use strange machines to change human bodies, turning them into something else. We've seen it happen to our own." Zara's mind was reeling. The Orexians were not just conquerors, they were harvesters, changing humanity into something they could control. And there was more to it, much more. "We have a plan," the man said, "but it's dangerous. It's the only chance we have." Zara nodded. "Tell us." The survivor hesitated before continuing. "We've located an Orexian facility, a place where they're doing the transformations. We've tried to infiltrate it before, but it's too well guarded. If we can get in, we might be able to destroy their equipment, stop the process. But we need to act quickly." Zara looked at her team, then back at the survivors. "We'll help you," she said firmly. "If we can stop them at their source, we'll have a chance." The room grew silent as Zara's words sank in. They were all willing to fight, but Zara could see the fear in their eyes. This mission wasn't going to be easy. In fact, it was going to be the hardest fight they'd ever faced. As Zara looked around the room, she felt a surge of determination. The Doomworlders had been created for this. They had been designed to fight, to survive, to save humanity from extinction. But they couldn't do it alone. They needed the resistance, and they needed to work together. It was a long shot, but it was their only shot. "We move out at dawn," Zara said. "Get ready, this isn't going to be easy." She turned to her team, her voice resolute. "We fight, and we win." But even as she spoke, Zara knew that victory wouldn't come without sacrifice. The Orexians had been relentless, and they were not going to give up easily. The real battle had only just begun. And Zara couldn't help but wonder, would humanity survive this time, or would they, too, become just another lost memory in the history of Earth? The dawn brought no comfort. Zara and her team were already awake, preparing for the most dangerous mission they had yet undertaken. The base was still eerily quiet, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The survivors they had met the day before were ready to move out, but Zara knew that they were all walking into a battle they might not survive. She stood at the edge of the base, looking out over the barren landscape. The air was thick with smoke from distant fires, the remnants of what had once been vibrant cities now reduced to ashes. The earth had become a wasteland. Nothing remained but dust and ruin. The Orexians had come, and humanity had been unprepared. Zara and her team, the Doomworlders, were humanity's last hope, but they couldn't do it alone. They needed the resistance, the few remaining survivors who were still willing to fight. But Zara could see the fear in their eyes. Even they knew the odds were slim. "Are we ready?" Mark's voice broke through her thoughts. She turned to see him standing behind her, his towering figure casting a long shadow in the morning light. "As ready as we'll ever be," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. They were heading into the heart of enemy territory, to the Orexian facility where they believed the transformation process was taking place. If they were right, the facility was the key to understanding the Orexians' true plans for Earth. But it was also the most heavily guarded location they had encountered. The rest of the team was assembling, checking their weapons and supplies. Sarah, the strategist, was deep in thought, her eyes scanning the map they had been given. There was no room for mistakes. They couldn't afford to waste any more time. The longer they waited, the more humanity would suffer. Zara took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the hilt of her weapon. She had been created for this. She had been designed to survive, to fight, to save humanity. But even she knew that this mission wasn't guaranteed to succeed. "We move out in 10 minutes, Zara said, her voice firm. "Everyone stay close, stick to the plan." The team nodded, and the survivors gathered their things. Zara's thoughts drifted back to the night before, when they had learned more about the Orexians and their twisted experiments. They weren't just conquering Earth. They were transforming its people into something else, something unrecognizable. And if they didn't stop them now, there would be no Earth left to save. Zara could feel the weight of the mission bearing down on her, but she pushed the doubts aside. She had to lead. The Doomworlders had been created for this moment. If they failed, humanity would be lost. She wouldn't let that happen, not after everything they had been through. They set out, moving quickly and quietly through the ruined streets. The city around them was a ghost town, the only sounds the distant rumbles of alien machines and the occasional crack of a falling building. Zara led the way, her enhanced vision scanning the area for any signs of danger. Every step felt like a step into the unknown, and the air was thick with tension. They moved for hours, the landscape stretching on endlessly, until they finally reached the outskirts of the Orexian facility. It was even more imposing up close. The facility was surrounded by high walls, the metal surface gleaming in the harsh light of the afternoon. Zara could see the faint glow of energy shields protecting it from any outside attack. They had expected this, but it didn't make it any easier. Zara signaled for the team to stop. They crouched behind the remains of a crumbled building, watching the facility in silence. The air was heavy with anticipation, each of them knowing that this was the moment that could change everything. "We can't just walk in," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible. "There's no way to breach those walls without being seen." "I know," Zara replied. "We'll need to find another way in. The facility is big, but we know where the entrance is. If we can make it past the outer defenses, we might have a chance." Mark looked at the facility, his face grim. "And if we do," Zara met his gaze, her eyes hard, "we don't have a choice." They spent the next hour quietly observing the facility, looking for any weaknesses in the perimeter. Zara's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. They needed to get inside, but the Orexians' technology was far beyond anything humanity had ever seen. They had been adapting for centuries, using Earth's resources and people to fuel their war machine. The transformation process, turning humans into soldiers for the Orexians, had to be stopped. It was their only chance. Zara motioned for the team to move. They moved quickly, sticking to the shadows, their footsteps silent on the cracked ground. The facility loomed ahead, its massive gates towering over them. Zara's heart pounded in her chest. This was it, the moment of truth. They reached the outer wall, finding a small gap in the metal. It was barely big enough for them to squeeze through, but it was their only option. Zara led the way, her enhanced senses alert to any sounds of movement. Once they were inside, the real challenge would begin. The air inside the facility was cool, almost sterile. The walls were lined with strange machinery, glowing with an eerie light. Zara could feel the weight of the place, the sense of danger that hung in the air like a thick fog. The walls seemed to close in on them, the quiet hum of the machines amplifying the silence. "Where to now?" Mark asked, his voice low. "We need to find the control room," Zara said. "It should be at the heart of the facility. That's where they're conducting the transformations. If we can shut it down, we can stop the Orexians." The team moved quickly, making their way through the twisting corridors of the facility. Every door they passed was locked, the security systems more advanced than anything they had seen before. Zara could feel the tension rising with each step. They were being watched, she knew it. The Orexians were aware of their presence, and it wouldn't be long before they would come for them. They reached a large door, its surface covered in strange symbols. Zara stepped forward, her enhanced strength making it easy to pry the door open. It creaked loudly, the sound echoing through the silent halls. Inside, the room was dark, lit only by the glow of the machinery. Zara's heart skipped a beat as she saw what lay inside. The room was filled with rows of humans, people who had been captured by the Orexians and transformed. They were no longer human. Their bodies were twisted, their eyes glowing with a strange, unnatural light. They were soldiers for the Orexians now, their minds wiped clean, their wills broken. Zara's stomach turned. This was the true horror of the Orexians' plan. They weren't just conquering Earth, they were erasing humanity itself. "We need to stop this," Zara said, her voice tight with anger. She motioned for her team to move forward, but before they could take another step, the door slammed shut behind them. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the room, and Zara's heart skipped a beat. The Orexians had found them. The battle was about to begin. The air inside the Orexian facility was heavy with tension. The door had slammed shut behind Zara and her team, and they were trapped. The metallic sound of footsteps grew louder, echoing through the cold, sterile halls. Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she motioned for the team to take cover. They were outnumbered, but not outmatched. Not yet. She could hear the low hum of the machines that surrounded them, the eerie glow of their lights casting long shadows on the walls. The room was filled with the twisted, transformed humans, their blank eyes staring forward, completely under the control of the Orexians. They had been stripped of their humanity, turned into mindless soldiers for the invaders. Zara's stomach churned at the sight. She had known about the transformations, but seeing them up close was something else entirely. "Stay quiet," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. "We need to find a way out of here." Mark, always the strong one, crouched beside her, his sharp eyes scanning the room. "There's no way out unless we make one. We need to act fast." Zara nodded, her mind racing. The facility was vast, and they were deep inside it. The control room had to be nearby, but it would be well guarded. They couldn't just waltz in and take it. They needed to be smart, use the element of surprise. The footsteps grew louder. Zara felt her pulse quicken. The Orexians were coming, and they were not going to wait for them to make a move. "We're not alone," Sarah whispered from behind them. Her voice was strained but steady. "They know we're here," Zara cursed under her breath. There was no time for hesitation. They had to act now or risk being caught. She turned to the team, her voice firm. "On my mark, we make our move. Sarah, get to that control panel over there." She pointed to a small console at the far end of the room. "Mark, you cover her. I'll take care of the soldiers." The team nodded, understanding the plan. There was no time for anything else. They had to fight their way through and make it to the heart of the facility. If they could stop the transformation process, they could save humanity. But first, they had to survive. Zara took a deep breath and steeled herself. She could feel the energy in her body, the enhancements that had been placed in her. She was stronger than any human, faster, more resilient. The Doomworlders had been created for moments like this, but she wasn't sure if even their strength would be enough against the Orexians. These aliens were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. As the first of the transformed soldiers entered the room, Zara wasted no time. She leaped forward, her enhanced speed allowing her to close the distance in an instant. The soldier barely had time to react before she grabbed him by the throat and slammed him against the wall. The force of the impact left a crack in the metal, and the soldier slumped unconscious to the ground. "Move!" Zara shouted as she turned to face the rest of the room. Mark and Sarah sprang into action. Mark's massive frame was a blur as he barreled toward another soldier, using his strength to overpower the transformed human. With a single swing of his fist, the soldier was knocked out cold. Sarah, though smaller, was quick and agile, darting through the room and reaching the control panel. Her fingers flew over the buttons, trying to bypass the security measures. Zara kept her eyes on the entrance, knowing that more soldiers were on the way. The noise from the battle was sure to draw the Orexians' attention, and they didn't have much time. "We need to hurry," Sarah said, her voice tense. "The security system is complex, but I think I can disable it. Just give me a minute." Zara nodded, glancing around the room. The transformed soldiers were starting to stir, but they were no match for her team. She could feel the adrenaline pumping through her veins as she prepared for the next wave of attacks. The minutes dragged on like hours as Sarah worked furiously at the control panel. Zara could hear the pounding of footsteps drawing closer. They had no time left. Suddenly, the door to the room burst open, and a group of Orexians stormed in. They were tall, their armor gleaming in the dim light. Zara didn't hesitate. She charged forward, her enhanced strength giving her the power to take on multiple enemies at once. The first Orexian she faced swung a bladed weapon at her, but Zara easily dodged it, twisting his arm and using his own momentum to throw him across the room. Mark was right behind her, taking on another group of soldiers. His brute force was unmatched, and with every punch an Orexian fell. Zara could see Sarah still working at the console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Almost there," Sarah muttered under her breath. Zara didn't have time to respond. She was already engaged with two more Orexians, their weapons flashing as they swung at her. She blocked one strike, then disarmed the other, tossing the weapon aside before landing a powerful blow to his chest. He crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The remaining soldiers hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to deal with the powerful Doomworlders. Zara saw her opportunity. She dashed forward, knocking the last soldier out of the way before heading toward the control panel. "Done," Sarah said, her voice relieved. "The system is offline." Zara didn't waste a second. She quickly assessed their surroundings. The Orexians had been temporarily subdued, but more were sure to arrive soon. They had no time to linger. "Let's go," Zara said, turning to lead the team deeper into the facility. "We need to destroy the transformation equipment." The team moved quickly, their path now clear. The control room was silent, save for the hum of the machines, but Zara could sense the weight of what they had just accomplished. They had taken down the security, and now they had a chance to stop the transformations. The fate of humanity rested in their hands. As they reached the heart of the facility, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The walls here were lined with strange, alien technology. The machines were unlike anything humanity had ever seen. They pulsed with energy, their hum filling the room. Zara knew that this was it, the heart of the Orexians' plan. "This is it," Zara said, her voice tight with determination. "We destroy everything." Mark stepped forward, ready to take action, but before he could move, the ground shook. A loud, booming sound echoed through the facility, followed by the screech of metal. Zara's heart skipped a beat as the walls around them began to tremble. Something was happening, something big. "Move!" Zara shouted as she dove for cover. The entire facility seemed to be coming apart. The walls cracked and the machines whined, their energy levels spiking. Zara could hear the sound of heavy footsteps approaching, and she knew that the Orexians were coming. They were closing in. "We don't have time," Sarah yelled, pulling a detonator from her belt. "We need to blow this place sky high now." Zara nodded, her eyes scanning the facility. They couldn't afford to wait any longer. The Orexians would be on them any second. "On my mark," Zara said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Everyone get clear." The team positioned themselves as Sarah prepared to trigger the explosion. Zara could hear the rumble of the approaching Orexians, their footsteps growing louder. The facility was shaking violently now, as if it were alive. 3, 2, 1, Zara counted down. The explosion ripped through the facility, sending a shockwave of energy through the air. Zara was thrown to the ground, the blast wave hitting her like a hammer. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment Zara couldn't see. She struggled to her feet, her enhanced strength helping her push through the disorienting effects of the blast. "Is everyone okay?" Zara shouted, scanning the smoke-filled room. "We're good," Mark called back, his voice clear. "But we need to move now." Zara turned toward the exit, her heart pounding in her chest. The blast had done its job. The transformation facility was destroyed, and with it a key part of the Orexians' plan. But Zara knew this wasn't the end. The Orexians would come for them. They were relentless. "Let's go," Zara said, leading the team out of the crumbling facility. "This isn't over. Not yet." As they emerged into the daylight, Zara looked out over the ruins of the Orexian facility. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Orexians would be back and the Doomworlders would be ready. For humanity's sake, they had no choice. The fight was just beginning, and Zara would fight until the end.